right. Okay. So yes, and cheers anybody that's on Richard's channel, and welcome to Kickoff. No, that's Wednesday, JOB78. And welcome to the Jolly Heretic. We are, of course, online public house. Meets on Mondays at 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. New York, which we discuss base stuff of various kinds or whatever is on our minds. I'm very pleased to see you. Hello, Kellen Crook. Cheers. Cheers, Helgen Gulligan, Capis, Saludo, Prost, Proust, Slanger, was it in Russian? I always forget it.
Nazdrovia.
Nazdrovia. I just got back from Bulgaria, of course, but they don't. It's very similar to Russian. So yes, so cheers, Skullmask, Skull, and welcome to the Jolly Heretic. Hello, JK. Who's Ed? Ed is only the person whose channel this is that you're watching, except that you're watching it via Richard's thing, so it's kind of not. It's confusing. But hello. Sorry. Hello, ladies. And welcome, ladies. Hello, ladies that are work on Richard's channel, and welcome to the Jolly Heretic. We are an online public house which meets on Mondays at 7 p.m. UK time, in which we discuss narcissism and all kinds of other fascinating subjects in a sensitive but intellectually stimulating way. So, cheers to you and hello. And hello to my people on my channel who are men. All right, and welcome, and hello, everybody. Now, yes. I've forgotten to read. We have a resident poet here at the Jolly Heretic Public House, and I've forgotten to read a number of his brilliant poems, so I'm very sorry about that. So I'm going to read some of them that he's written of late as follows. And so it's farewell to the Tories. Say goodbye to electoral glories. They've run out of steam and can now only dream enough of their terrible stories. Okay. Oh, look, it's old Channel 4. As always, a bit of a bore. They pose as well meant, but it seems they are bent and rotten right through to the core. That is, of course, with reference to them using an actor that pretended to be a candidate for the Reform Party. And finally, tonight we will pause for reflection and consider the UK election. Now we have Starmer, who's far from a charmer and inspires no national affection. That is true. He's not a charmer, really, is he? He's a slogger. He's a slogger.
Not much of anything, really. I can't really. You couldn't analyze his personality because there sort of seems to be one present.
He's very dull. I mean, Tony Blair may have been this manipulative snake oil salesman and may have taken the country for a ride. But with this guy, it's like John Major. But John Major was slightly more interesting in that his father was a circus clown. Whereas Keir Starmer's father was a tool maker, apparently. And I love the way that he said he was working class. He's not working class. Your dad's a tool maker. That's a skilled profession. And your mum's a nurse. You're lower middle class. Oh, I'm working class. No, the only working class prime minister we've had is, of course, Ramsay MacDonald, whose father was a shepherd.
Are we struggling globally to come up with decent representatives for the various parties that exist? There's particularly impressive representatives at the moment anywhere, really. When a party needs to be represented, it always seems to be, oh, well, this is the chap we've got, and that's it. We're just siding behind him because we hate the other team.
Or there's just nobody else. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on in America. The idea that the best you can find if you're the Democratic Party is a manifestly senile old man who's a bit of a perv. And whose son is, I don't know where to start with him. If the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, then bloody hell. So I can't understand how there can't be somebody else that's a bit.
When you say he's a perv, you mean all this stuff of gripping children's heads and then sniffing them?
Yeah, well, apparently his daughter said that they do think that he'd shower with her together up to and including an inappropriate age, and there's various implications there. And of course, we all know what his son's been up to. But anyway, there is a bit of a problem with leadership at the moment. I don't know what's exactly going on. Maybe we can get into that. But this election now, Richard, what were your did you have any? I've got some thoughts, but did you have particular thoughts as to what the hell's gone on here?
Well, the thoughts I had, there's a few. One of the things that I notice is that speaking to people in the UK, because I'm not in the UK all the time, is there's this overwhelming apathy and cynicism for a general election. But maybe it's because I'm in the north, I don't know. People are mainly concerned with survival. They're really, really struggling financially. They're really struggling to make ends meet. I was speaking to a guy today who was talking about buying food wholesale and saying that from 2020 to now, the cost of buying a certain food that he described had nearly doubled. So the priority seems to be on how do we survive, not who's in charge now, which I think is dangerous. I think that's a sign of a country that's really in trouble. It's almost as though the political class is completely divided from everybody else, and there's this sense of, well, it doesn't matter who's in charge because nothing's going to really change anyway.
No, that's true. That's consistent with the. I mean, if you think about it, with the 2001 election, you just had in '97 a massive Labour victory. It was perfectly obvious that Labour were going to win, and so this suppressed the turnout, and people thought, "Oh, what's the point? It's obvious that Labour's going to win. This is a waste of time." And so you had a turnout of about 58%. This time, you have a party that's been in power for 14 years. You have all kinds of stuff that's happened that's going to make people pissed off with the government, Partygate, the Liz Truss financial debacle, massive inflation, COVID lockdown, everything else. You would expect them to be furious, like after '97 and a long time, and what a change. But the turnout was again about 58%. So, and a key reason why the Conservatives did so badly is because a lot of their supporters are just still votes. No point. It's not really different.
Couldn't be asked.
Conservatives have presided over mass immigration. Labour will preside over mass immigration. No, we had Brexit. We were let down. We clearly Brexit was a vote to lower immigration and lower it substantially. In the face of that, we had highest immigration ever. And so, what's the bloody point?
Well, and that's a reasonable position, and I don't I don't begrudge people feeling that way, because if the Tories were for Americans who don't know, our Tories are roughly your Republicans. It's the conservative side of things. They don't map exactly. They've been in power here for 14 years. We had a vote to leave the EU. We had Brexit here, and it wasn't to stop mass immigration per se and as such, but that's largely why people voted, right? Most people said we wanted control of our borders. That's what motivated them to vote for Brexit and say we don't want mass immigration. And yet, as you've just said, it's increased. And I don't begrudge people feeling like, well, what's the point then? What difference does it make which way we vote? It doesn't change anything anyway. And I have bills to pay, and I have to worry about my rent, and I have to worry about feeding my children. So, as I say, yeah, it's a worrying unanchoring from political engagement.
But there are certain people, though, that are extremely politically engaged. To wit, for our American viewers, we have the same system that you have, i.e. first past the post. And for our American viewers, the country is divided into approximately 650 constituencies, and the person that gets the majority of those wins. So this militates strongly against small parties. And we've had this crazy situation. With you, it doesn't matter in America, because you basically just have the Republicans and the Democrats. But we don't have that now. We have the Conservatives, we have Labour, we have the Liberal Democrats, we have the Reform Party, and the Reform Party took 14% of the vote. And they got 4 million votes. The Liberal Democrats got something like 12% of the vote, and they got 3.5 million votes. And nevertheless, the Liberal Democrats have 72 seats, and the Reform Party have 5 seats. So This is what happens when you have a first past the post system, which is set up for there to be 2 parties, Conservative and Liberal, or Conservative and Labour. But when that doesn't happen, you get these ludicrous anomalies. The Green Party just campaigned in a few seats and won. And so they have, I think, is it 4 seats? Or I can't remember. So you have this ludicrous anachronistic system which throws up these preposterous results. But in certain areas, people were engaged. And therefore, even though it is viciously hard for anything other than Conservative, Labour, or Lib Dem to win a seat, in 5 seats, there were independents who were elected. And in a number of seats, they were nearly elected. It's really, I think that's the big thing, because that shows you that the sectarian politics of Northern Ireland, where you don't vote for somebody because of their policies, you vote for somebody because they represent your community, because they represent your denomination, and you are like that. That has now come to the UK, and you have enough seats where there's enough basically South Asian Muslims who are pissed off about the Gaza situation and so on, and don't like the fact that Labour have refused to condemn Israel, that they have elected members of parliament. And this has happened in a number of places. So you have in Leicester South a guy called Shakal Ahmed, and they're quite educated people as well. They're the leaders of their communities, who's an optometrist, so a senior doctor. You have Iqbal Mohammed of Derby and Bateley, who's an engineer. 40% of people living in Bateley are Muslim, and 40% of the people of Bateley voted for this person. Abner Khan is a solicitor in Blackburn, and Ayub Khan, who is a barrister in Birmingham Perry Bar. And then also in, I think it's in Birmingham Yardley, is that the name of the seat, which belonged to Jess Phillips. The Workers' Party, which is basically pro-Muslim, pro-Palestine, were almost elected. In Wes Streeting's seat, he was almost toppled. Which is a member of the the cabinet, by the way, a health secretary. And then there's a guy called Jonathan Ashworth, who was a shadow cabinet member and got up publicly and said, "Oh, there's no such thing as sectarianism in Britain. That's racist to say that." And sectarianism has cost him his seat. So that, I think that's the big thing, and I think that's going to continue, because these people, unlike the British, who vote along whether they like or traditionally vote along whether they like the policies or not, these people are just voting along the lines of, I am Muslim and South Asian, these people represent me, I am voting for them. It's the nearest equivalent to really white people voting for a party because they're pro-white.
Yeah, which I followed the logic of that. It does seem to be a little bit endemic of a broader scale problem, which is a lack of long-term thinking. Like, there doesn't seem to be much long-term systemic thinking. Like, if we do this over here, we're all interconnected. What's the ultimate long-term result of that going to be? This version of democracy that we have, it doesn't seem to be functioning very well, because before you said it's largely set up for a two-party system. Okay, that sucks. But what if the two-party system is practically indistinguishable? Sorry, what if the two parties within the two-party system are largely indistinguishable? It kind of just becomes defunct, really, doesn't it? I mean, is there a massive difference in policy between as you were telling me, between having the Tories in and then having, I don't know, somebody like Blair in?
There's a difference in policy, but not in practice.
So right. Okay. Yes.
The policy of the Conservatives may be to reduce immigration down to the tens of thousands, but they don't actually do it because there isn't the will to. There are various things that are above British law, such as the European Convention on Human Rights and various other agreements, and various laws that have been passed that bind their hands. They'd have to have a sort of act of oblivion, like Cromwell had, where after Cromwell was finished, where they just undo every law that New Labour passed, Supreme Court, everything, make Parliament sovereign, absolutely sovereign, with nothing above it. And then they could perhaps do something about it, but they can't. And also, even within the Conservative Party, there's the left wing of it anyway, which would oppose these things.
So then, back to the point made earlier, if you get into power in inverted commas, but you actually don't have the power to enforce the policies that you want to enforce, that your peers want to enforce, that your constituents want you to enforce, what is the point?
No, there isn't. And that's what, if you read it, everyone mocks her. But if you read Liz Truss's autobiography that she published recently, it's very interesting. She basically says this. She says, I got into power and I'm basically told by civil servants, you can't do this. It's very Sir Humphrey, but much more direct. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't. And you're confronted with woke civil servants that have risen up through the New Labour system, basically, and who will frustrate you at every turn. And so you just can't get anything radical done.
So you're in power in name only then?
Yeah, you're in office, but not really in power, because the Blair regime has outsourced power to all kinds of things, to quangos, to offices for Ofcom, off this, off that, to local parliaments, to regions, to whatever. So it used to be that to the Supreme Court. So it used to be that Parliament was sovereign, Parliament was in charge, nothing was above Parliament, and now that's just not the case. So So, but then the other thing that happened, which was interesting. Oh, sorry. Kay Buckley makes the point that George Galloway lost his seat. This is a very good point. So everybody was horrified that George Galloway, being against Israel and being against some woke things and transsexuality and whatever, got into power, and so got a seat. I'm sorry. And so, of course, then every effort was in February in a by-election. So every effort was made to unseat him. And you even had Hope Not Hate campaigning in his constituency to unseat him, against which, of course, he complained, saying it was election interference. So all of these resources, the henchmen of New Labour and Labour itself and all this, were sent to that constituency to unseat him, and they ignored or weren't aware of the possibility that there would be these independent Muslims that would get themselves elected. So that's why they sort of slipped under the radar, I think.
So George Galloway wasn't towing the party line in the way that they wanted him to, and so they kicked him out.
They see him as like an evil leftist. The left-wing yobs see him and Piers Corbyn and people like that as bad leftists. So because they doubt climate change, or they doubt trans ideology, or they are against Israel or whatever. So they get into the Hope Not Hate anti-Nazi League report alongside the far right, alongside Nigel Farage, alongside Rishi Sunak, whatever. They're a problem.
So then I'm going to say something a bit naive. I'm not politically well educated. Doesn't that mean, in a certain sense, what you get does represent the will of the people? Because if there's enough people who want those policies in place and are prepared to block anything that goes against those policies, then it seems we are, as insane as this seems, and as much of a chaotic mess as it looks, we are still getting kind of the will of the people.
You're getting the will of the elite, which is not necessarily the same thing as the will of the people.
How is it the will of the elite?
It's the civil servants that are blocking things, and the other people.
You're calling civil servants elite? I see.
Well, I think so. Yeah, they're not. They're highly educated people. They're at the top of society. So
yes,
you're getting the will of the establishment class of a certain kind.
Another possibly stupid point: has the population of the civil servant class, has it grown in the last 20-30 years? Have they become a larger force?
Well, yeah, I think the bureaucracy of all kinds has grown in the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, you could argue, couldn't you? This is a good point, Richard. You could argue that anybody that works for the state is effectively a civil servant. If you're on the payroll of the state, it was the view in Victorian England that you shouldn't be allowed to vote if you're on the payroll of the state, because that will corrupt the system, because you will inherently vote for a larger state, or at least to maintain the size of the state as it is. And so in Victorian England, there was a tiny number of people that worked for the state back then. But in Victorian England, if you worked for the state, even putting aside what the voting entitlement was in terms of property or whatever, if you worked for the state, you could not vote. So because it was considered that you're part of the government. So, for example, what was that guy? There was this particular author. His name escapes me at the moment, but this Victorian novelist who worked for the post office. Goodness me, Trollope, Anthony Trollope, and he was always very unhappy about the fact that he could not vote. That he was a civil servant, he worked for the post office, so managing the post office, so he was banned from voting.
That sounds like a very sensible policy.
Very sensible, but if we did that, it would mean that about 1/3 of people could not vote. School teachers could not vote. Doctors could not vote. Anybody that worked for the state is basically likely to vote in favour of a larger state.
Let's imagine for a second you and I are dictators of the United Kingdom. How do you fix that? Whatever policy you give me, I'm going to enforce it at the point of a gun. How do I fix it?
Yeah, you'd have to enforce it at the point of a gun. Or I suppose what you could do is what they do in America, which the civil servants are politicized. So you come in and you just sack all the civil servants, and you bring in new civil servants who are there to enforce what you want. But the problem with that is that if you have some horrible dictatorial unpleasant government that's prepared to break the law, then the politically neutral civil servants, and again, America, same thing. We have politically neutral judges. They have judges they elect, And so again, the judges are above the law, and the judges are there to ensure that the law is in part, in theory anyway, but the law is, of course, not in practice, because you get the subversion of that system and you get politicized lawyers that work their way up or whatever. But in theory, they're supposed to be impartial. Now, of course, the problem with that is that if you're a judge and you're up for election, there is pressure on you in certain trials when there's mob rule or whatever to come to the unpopular decision. So even if you think that this person is innocent, if all of the mob is saying, well, they're guilty, then you must direct the jury to find them guilty. An example of this is that the trial of that young man, I forget what his name was, that shot some people.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Is that his name? Yeah. And the judge was highly impartial and regarded the defense as appalling and said so, and all this sort of thing. And he was very lucky to have a judge like that, because if he'd had the kind of judge that Derek Chauvin had, it wouldn't have gone that way at all.
Right.
So you've got to. So there's good things about the American system, i.e., politicized civil servants cannot obstruct a new government, but there's bad things about it, i.e., that it is itself politicized. So it's hard to know what to do really for the best. But we have a situation where we had basically a sort of an attitude, I think, among an earlier generation, the Sir Humphrey generation, that we are although perhaps in practice they were probably quite conservative people. But that we are here to be neutral and to simply enforce the law. In reality, I suspect they were strongly conservative, and now, unfortunately, they are strongly liberal. And so it's the conservatives that have all their policies. Have you seen that? What's that film called? What was that film called? It was A Very British Coup. Have you seen it? Film Very British Coup.
I must have done.
It's
I recognise the title.
It was written by a guy called Chris Mullins, who was a Labour member of Parliament in the 80s and 90s. And it was about a really left-wing, like as if Michael Foot had won the 83 election, like a really left-wing Labour government getting into power. And then, of course, what happens is that every organ of the establishment, every civil servant, everything, does everything they can to stop him. And eventually there is a coup, and he is removed. But that, I think, is the problem that Liz Truss is arguing. If you look at her interview as well on the Lotus Eaters, she directly says it, that is what she was up against. So she couldn't get done a coup to remove it.
Without having a violent revolution at the end of a gun, would it not be sensible to start saying, okay, we have to restrict the power of civil servants to some degree? You can't just have politically motivated civil servants working inside of the machine of democracy to push the cogs and levers in different directions.
And the same with judges. But what can you do to ensure these people are utterly neutral? You can say no person that's ever been a member of a political party should be allowed to be a judge or a civil servant. That would be something they can do. That isn't the case. But Harold Wilson was a civil servant. Ted Heath was a civil servant. But that would be something you could do. It's very, very difficult because they're members of the upper or the upper middle class, and those people are going to have certain inclinations. For example, intelligence, and they're going to be highly intelligent people, is currently associated with being left wing. So you're going to expect civil servants to be left wing because they're intelligent.
So So at the moment in the UK, if somebody's hit a certain level of intelligence and a certain level of education and privilege, that's an indicator that they will have left-wing ideas. But when you say left-wing, are you talking even? But you mean woke?
Well, yeah, okay, well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's very left-wing, but certainly left-wing. Certainly left-wing. On average, more than they'll be right-wing, in the same way that academia is. So you've got that, and that's a problem that is militated against in America, because when they come in, it's like a new CEO coming in and bringing in all his own people. They just bring in all their own people and they get rid of everybody else. And so that problem that is not there, but they can't bring in certain people. So, for example, I think that they said towards the end of Trump's presidency, the head of the military guy in America said that if he was ordered by his commander in chief to do something crazy, he just wouldn't do it. Now that's not allowed. I mean, in the general scheme of things, you must obey your commander in chief. That's like, what's the word for it? Not treason, but mutiny. And so he was basically openly stated he would have been mutinous if Trump had told him to do
seditious.
Yeah, but seditious is just planning something bad. But this is actually mutiny.
Oh, is it?
He'd
Oh, okay. I thought that was sedition.
do it. He'd put the sedition into action. So not just plan it. So that's the balance that we're up against. Another thing that happened, by the way, in terms of sectarian politics, was that you may remember a couple of years ago in Leicester, there was rioting. Leicester, for our American viewers, is a majority, it's like 55% or more non-white, and it's overwhelmingly South Asian people Pakistani and Indian, and a particular part of Leicester, Leicester East, is highly Hindu. Leicester West is more Muslim, and in 1987, a South Asian called Keith Vaz, who wasn't a Hindu actually, he was Christian, but anyway, he was elected, and he was the first, or one of the first. There were three that were elected in '87, non-white MPs, and then there were various scandals surrounding him and whatever, and he went, and he was replaced by a black woman called Claudia Webb, and interestingly, there were various scandals surrounding her, so she stood down. But when she was MP and there were these riots in Leicester, she blamed the Hindus for the riots. She took the side of the Muslims in the riots. They were Hindu-Muslim riots, and blamed the Hindus, with the result that there was a Hindu conservative and a Hindu Labour up against each other to win that seat, and the Hindu conservative won. Because the Hindus of Leicester East decided to punish the Labour Party for their MP having a go at the Hindus. So this hasn't been a Conservative MP for Leicester since '87. So you can see that, again, this is just sectarian politics, and in this case, it's sectarianism between the Hindus and the Muslims who don't like each other.
Yeah.
So this is what's happening in Britain. I mean,
it's a mess,
unbelievable mess. Ironically, you have the very people who've been calling, like this Jess Phillips woman, and she said on the stage, what was it? She said, I can understand how be a strong woman standing up to you is met with such reticence. Just doesn't know what reticence means, but I think she might. I don't know what she meant to say, but anyway, put that aside. That she's thick. She also said that the power of my friend Sargon of Akkad can't be underestimated. It can't.
Oh yeah, you told me this.
Under. Stupid woman. Anyway, not that all women are stupid. Some women are very intelligent, but not that one. And all the women that are watching Richard's channel, they're very intelligent. Such as
there's two women watching your channel. They're intelligent.
The two women that are subscribed to my channel, they're very, very intelligent. And Watkins Inc., who's watching on your channel, I'm sure she's very, very intelligent. She looks intelligent, symmetrical face. It correlates with intelligence at 0.1. But so that's what as is misinformation, and she's watching on my channel. And Nell is laughing. Nell is laughing a number of times. She's watching your channel, also hot. But not in a creepy Joe Biden kind of way. In a 43-year-old man who's happily married and just observes the facts. Anyway, now So I was so busy thinking about your hot, sexy followers that I forgot what I was talking about. Richard, what was going on?
My God,
It was all. And Lady Mercia, she's on my channel as well, and she's very pretty. And Indigo Daffodil, she's laughing her fucking arse off. Apparently, she's not really. That's the art. She's engaging in the art of hyperbole. And Scapegoat is one of the original women subscribers. I must be very smart. What, to my channel? No, you're watching on Richard's channel, though, Scapegoat. So I don't know about that. But where were we? Got confused. Yeah. So this hot Indian bird who came second in Miss India UK was elected to be the MP for Leicester East.
How long ago was that?
That was on Thursday.
Oh,
how long ago was she Miss India UK? Oh, I don't. I think she's.
No, I meant when was she elected? I'm not. I'm off the hotness.
Thursday, I don't know if you've heard, was the election. But so that's when she was elected. But she was born in '94, so I'm assuming she was Miss India UK, like, I don't know, 2012.
And mysteriously, you're claiming she was elected during the election, which was Thursday.
She was elected during the election, which is. I mean, well done to her. Well, she could have been elected Friday morning, I suppose. It depends. I don't know exactly what time the election was. The result came in Leicester East. And I was very upset that a chap when I was at university, I was on Durham Student Theatre Executive Committee. And another chap on it was a guy called Matt Warman, and he was the member of Parliament for Boston and Skegness, and he lost his seat to Richard Tice of the Reform Party, who the most cucked member of the Reform Party, the one that was sacking all these people for saying opinions in the past. So the one that was so boring that Nigel Farage thought, well, if I don't become leader of the party, they'll get no seats and no one will care. So I will remove Richard Tice and I will be leader of the party, and then things will happen. And he was correct. That's correct, Kay Buckley. Her name is Shavina Raya, whatever you just said. I've written it down somewhere. Shivana Raya. That's her name. So that's it. So basically, it's absolutely. And then the what else? The Conservative candidate thing is a problem, of course, because just as happened in '97, all these people that would have been good leaders of the Conservative Party, like Michael Portillo or whatever, lost their seats. And so you were left with this rump, and they wanted to have someone young and funky and Blair-like, but there was no one like that. And all the best they could come up with was William Hague, who was this prematurely balding old fogey. And I remember thinking at the time, this is a disastrous idea. And he was meant to be running as Michael Howard's running mate. And ironically, then Michael Howard was removed, and Michael Howard subsequently came in to rescue the party after Hague and Ian Duncan Smith did nothing. So they maybe should have voted for him in the first place. And they should have voted for Ken Clarke, who was avuncular and nice, and people liked him. And they should have said, "Oh no, we're not going to win the next election. That's written off. So we'll just vote for some jolly, jovial chap that people like, sort of Boris Johnson, but more honest. And hopefully things will then we'll elect someone else later." Like the David Cameron type, but they didn't do that. They went for William Hague, and it was disastrous.
Well, one of the things that strikes me with a lot of this is coming off the back of living in the United Arab Emirates for a year, is we do seem to make things a little bit more complicated for ourselves. And I know that it's in the name of being civilized and fair and democratic, but you do see some of the downsides of being wanting so much to fawn and to sort of codependently please people all the time. You do lose an awful lot of ground like that.
Well, yeah, I was saying this when Charlie was on election night. I think that there is a narcissistic abuse element to what happened. I think we talked about it as well, to what happened to the Conservative Party. They thought to themselves, oh, how are they were like autistics. They thought to themselves, well, how is it that they get invited to all the birthday parties and have all the friends, i.e. New Labour wins the election? We should do what they do. We should mirror them. We should mask our true selves. And so we should do things like, I remember being told by the head of Conservative Future when I was 17, we were going to go to the Conservative Party conference, and said, if I see any of you wearing a tie, I will personally come and rip it off your necks. But but that's what we're Conservatives. We wear ties. We're smart. We're not degenerate like New Labour. We don't wear like gimp clothes. And I mean, we don't wear like posing pouches and chains. And so there was this whole idea of imitating Labour, but it's disingenuous because it's not us. It's not what we're about. It's not what Conservatives do. And everyone realised it was disingenuous, and it just came across as absolutely pathetic when you have that image of William Hague going down a water slide with a cap on, with a baseball cap saying Hague. Everyone just laughed at it.
Stupid.
It's not them. Them is tweed jackets and cravats and trad and wholesome stuff like that. And so that was, I think there was a sort of, it was this, and it's exhausting for autistics to engage in masking, and they lose their sense of who they are, and they wonder who they are, and they feel all discombobulated and confused, and then they get into power, and and they're exhausted, and they don't really have any will anymore to do anything, and they don't really feel they can do anything because the narcissistic abuser of New Labour has ground them down and told them they're shit, and they've accepted that and seen the world through their eyes and tried to please them, and then they don't know who they are, and so then they just do nothing for 14 years until the abuser comes back and abuses them some more.
Maybe this is an overall cultural phenomenon. We're just seeing it reflected in the political space then, where you just have a sort of a degenerate unstoppable urge to please everyone at all times. It's almost as though we've made being agreeable a high, lofty cultural value. Tolerance, agreeability, acceptance, never saying no, breaking all boundaries, overthrowing all boundaries, overthrowing all institutions, and then at the end of it,
well, we've certainly done that. I think there's no question that we have done that. I've argued this in many of my books, including, if you want an introduction to my thinking, The Naked Classroom, the evolutionary psychology of your time at school, which you can buy on Amazon. But I've done, yeah, absolutely. We our values used to be group oriented. It was based around the sanctity and disgust and keeping out foreign bodies that we considered bad for the group. It was based around obedience to authority, and it was based around in-group loyalty. And to a much lesser extent, were we interested in equality and i.e. everyone's equal and has an equal share of things and considered equal, and harm avoidance, i.e. there's nothing worse than hurting people's feelings and you should be tolerant of everything. And since the 60s, we've turned that on its head, and we now totally laud feelings, basically female moral foundations, individually oriented foundations, equality, everyone should be equal. We go on and on about it. This idea of leveling up, equality, that's a conservative idea. And what about the idea that inequality is good and the person that's the strongest fights and wins?
Yeah.
So it's inequality and particularly feelings, and this idea that you can't even tell a man who is deluded that they are a man. You must acknowledge and publicly state the veracity of their fantasy. So we can't even tell fantasists that they are fantasists. So we have exalted those values. We have turned them into the new gods almost, and they're not to be so. And then as part of that, these leftists, one of their motivations is basically anti-hierarchical. That's part of equality, isn't it? They hate hierarchy. So hierarchy is to be ripped down. And so then you're in a vacuum where, well, I don't know, there was nothing left.
Well, hierarchies to be ripped down, but this is the hypocrisy that gets on my nerves is, unless your child has a brain tumor and then you want the best surgeon for your child's urgent tumor surgery off their brain, then hierarchy matters. Then you don't mind a meritocracy, you don't mind elitism. You don't say, we'll give you a brain surgeon based on their ethnicity or their sexuality or their gender identification. Well, we can do that. You have two choices. You can have the DEI selected brain surgeon or the best brain surgeon we have available. Which one are you going to choose? We know which one they would choose.
No, it is hypocritical, but it would be because these people are individually oriented. They're selfish people. If you're a selfish person and you are of low status, or you are mentally unstable and neurotic, and therefore you believe you are of low status, even though you are not, then you will be in favor of equality because you will believe that equality will bring about more for you, and you will be in favor of harm avoidance because it will avoid harm for you, and you will play for status because you won't dare do so through a fair fight because you're neurotic and weak, remember, and you think you'll lose, so you will play for status via virtue signaling. And having those traits that I just mentioned correlates with low agreeableness, i.e. being a selfish person, being a nasty person, and low conscientiousness, as well as with high neuroticism, mental instability, which makes you aggressive and as well as anxious and whatever. So it's hypocritical, yes, but it's perfectly consistent in the psychological literature that that's exactly what they should do. I would be surprised if they didn't. That's the kind of people that will signal and will be interested in those things. Whereas, ironically, the conservatives, who overtly are less kind in so much as they are less interested in equality and they are less interested in harm avoidance, are actually the nicer people. They're the ones that they're high in agreeableness, they're high in conscientiousness, they're low in mental instability, and they are satisfied with life. So they're not the Promethean movers and shakers of the world. They have no great desire for change. They're quite happy as they are, even if they're poor. And they just sort of enjoy life and just want to grill. And that's why things will always go the way of the leftist, because the conservative is about the same in all 5 of these moral foundations that I mentioned earlier. The leftist only values the individually oriented ones. The conservative will give ground. We always want to placate the mentally unstable, crazy person. I remember from a certain conference I was at, you meet a mentally unstable, crazy woman, and rather than just point her out for that's what she bloody is, you got to try and calm her down and please her and make her feel better and all this sort of thing. Whereas actually, you should just say, look, you're a mutant, fuck off. And you're a vulnerable narcissist. Get out.
I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. I do think there is an argument to be made that this is about a lack of will. I don't think there's some huge, monstrous, undefeatable enemy out there. It's just that people aren't prepared to push back, and all we have to do is just say no. No, I'm not going to agree with your delusions. No, I'm not going to agree with these policies, and no, I'm not going to accept your derisive claims that I'm racist because I want border control on a country. I think this is I'm surprised we even have to argue about it. If you don't have control of your borders, if you have porous boundaries in your house, in your body, in your country, it's not going to last very long.
Well, no, you have to argue about it because it's you virtue signal by saying there should be porous borders, and you've got people using the word fascist in the chat. I mean, that just proves that's my whole point, isn't it? That people that use that word should just be deported, in my view. You're using a term of abuse, a highly emotive term of abuse, to shut down arguments you dislike rather than logically argue with them.
But then it's our job to say, okay, you can call me a fascist, you can call me a racist, I'm not going to stop.
But you're manipulating other people. You're manipulating people by using that word. And someone has just used the magic word in the chat that no one's allowed to use, and that's another example.
What's that?
The magic word that no one can say, the word that is the new F word, the word that you can't say, the word that word. So the magical word, the word that will bring down the heavens. And so you've got to see that. But well, to be fair, though, you do get a backlash. The thing is, conservatives are so tolerant and they're so happy with life, and so to push them to a point where they're furious, where they feel that they're so difficult to get angry on average. There are exceptions. I mean, you get some people like the extreme conservatives. They're high in psychopathic traits, and they're very low in caring about harm avoidance or equality, very low, and very high in the group-oriented traits. And so that's different. But that's like the radical conservatives. But I'm talking about the conservatives, the general conservative. You've got to push them pretty far, but they are higher than liberals in disgust. And an element of sanctity, and that is order and structure and truth and things like that. I think that's an element of it. And so you've got to push them quite far to get a reaction. And I think it seems that the immigration thing has pushed them far. It's pushed them so far that they've now voted in the UK 14% of people, even though it's considered a wasted vote, even though they knew that they'd only get a few MPs, if any, even though. They're just they just forget it. The argument of the Conservative Party, correct argument, was if you vote for reform, you're going to give Labour an enormous majority. If you don't vote for reform, then we can stand up to them. And they just thought, we don't care, we don't believe you, we're not interested. And so that's how angry they are. And so you have to push them like that, and also which they've managed to do finally, and also just undermine. If you get them poor as well, that's a sure way to ensure that you're going to get a reaction. And someone's saying 2 million of those votes are from Labour. That may well be a good point, sir. And so you've a lot of them. It's tribal voting. A lot of people in England. I don't know where you're from, sir, but a lot of people in England, from the north of England, it's just you don't vote Conservative. Conservatives are vermin.
You can't do that round here. You can't have conservative views in the north of England. Generally, certainly not in the northwest, where I'm from. You cannot have conservative views. You must be a leftist.
I think you can have conservative views, but you still vote Labour. You don't vote Conservative. I mean, even it's a class thing. It used to be. My grandfather used to vote Labour. I said, "Why do you vote Labour?" Because I'm working class. That's it. Yeah. And so you've got to do a great deal to dislodge that. You've got to make people really, really, really angry. So I think that this is worth This is worth bearing in mind. Now, what? Yes. So that's that. That's that then. And then the other interesting anomaly is this fact that they're going to have this huge majority, and presumably what's her name? That this the first female chancellor that they've let in. Oh God, what's her name? I can't remember her name. I mean, that's how interesting she is. That's how exciting these people are. I can't remember what her name is. Who's the female chancellor, chaps? Reeves. That's it. Rachel Reeves. Never trust someone whose name alliterates, even if it's not her maiden name and it's her husband's name. I don't care. Never, ever, ever. But and she's going to come in and she's going to find that she's got all of these things she wants to do, and she won't be able to do them because there's no bloody money. So I don't see how that's going to work.
No, I think, as I said at the beginning, some of this stuff just looks like it's running out of steam, and I think we're probably going to see similar effects for the US election as well, because I think there's just a lack of credibility, there's a lack of faith, and maybe we know too much now. Maybe in the age of social media, we know too much, we know too quickly, and the dream is dead. You can't cause people to fall into a shared fantasy with you because there's too much reality to sustain the fantasy of democracy.
That's a good point. With Labour, there wasn't, you didn't have young people in 1997 that had access to books by really based authors. You had to go out of your way, as I think we might have discussed before. You had to go out of your way to find this stuff. You couldn't. There was no internet. How on earth were you supposed to find out about Julius Evola or any other base author? You had to really go out of your way, and it was something sort of secret and evil. I remember going in the phone book and trying to find these. You'd be in the park and there'd be some poster about it or something like that. And now you can just find it. So perhaps that's true, that it's less easy in this age. And so much easier for people to understand that democracy is nonsense. And if it wasn't nonsense, they wouldn't let us have it.
Well, I think if you I think this is something we've discussed. I discussed it with Darren McGee the other day. If you're going to motivate people to do something, whether it's politics or going to a voting booth or going to a demonstration or whatever, there has to be a fantasy. There has to be a motivating fantasy that activates certain introjects that makes you have the energy and the passion to go out and do it. And the fantasy, most of us realize it's something of a fantasy at a certain point, but we do it because we think we can make the fantasy real. If you go in going, we can't make the fantasy real, you're not gonna motivate people to move in the direction you want them to go.
No, that's true. Lola Noble says, what about a library? Oh, well, come on. I mean, the libraries are highly limited in the kind of books they get in. Libraries are most unlikely to get in based books. By the way, Lola Noble, I recognize that name somehow. Are you the person that sent me a video of yourself doing an impression of me with an Australian accent about 5 years ago? I liked that video. But is that you? And you were wearing a cravat and you were doing an impression of me, and but you're American and you couldn't do an English accent very well. Yes, you are. Well, hello, Lola. How are you doing? But for some reason you're watching through Richard's channel, which I regard as treasonous. But no, not you. Oh no, it's not her. It must have been somebody else then. But I thought there was certainly. I'm sure the person's called Lola, and she sent me a video of herself doing an impression of me in an Australian accent, wearing a cravat. She was American. It was quite good. I don't know where this impression is, but there you go. Lola says hello, Professor. Hello, Lola. But you're not that person, though. So it must have been somebody else I have in mind. I quite liked it though. It was quite fun. Yeah. So no, that's a good point though. Yeah, they can't get people, but they could get people involved in the shared fantasy of the the fantasy of that.
Well, that. In my humble opinion, I think what was required for that, and if you didn't feel it, you wouldn't have the empathy. Like I didn't feel it, so I didn't have the empathy. You needed terror. So if you didn't feel the terror, you were bewildered by the behavior and the sudden obedience and everything. But those who did feel the terror, that was what created the fantasy. So that obviously a fantasy can be one that you move away from. It could be a terrifying fantasy. It could be a fantasy based on fear and terror, and that motivates you to move. but without. So if you didn't feel the terror, you would, everybody watching this who didn't feel terrified, you would have been totally bewildered by the behavior of your friends and neighbors, and it would have been hard to feel compassion. Once you run their simulation as an exercise of empathy and go, but how would I feel if I was bloody terrified that me, my family, my friends, everybody's going to melt in front of me from some evil Ebola-like thing that's going to destroy you on contact? Yes, I would have gone along with whatever they told me to do. If they'd said on a Thursday night, stand outside on one leg with your pants around your ankles and jump around in a circle for the NHS, if I was terrified enough, I would do anything.
It was, well, exactly. It was almost like doing this. If you're Catholic and something bad happens, like crossing yourself
Yes.
for fear. It was a
Yes.
ritual.
It was a ritual.
I think the jab was a ritual. I did, and it was just a sort of a collective ritual, like communion. That people.
Well, it was more of a. Well, so first of all, for American viewers or people outside of the UK, for a while, every Thursday night at 8 o'clock at night or whenever, everybody was going out and clapping in the street to the sky. They would go out and clap for the National Health Service because of the amazing job that they were doing, which is an oddly religious. The point Ed's just made is an oddly religious thing to do. I hadn't actually thought of the injection itself being a religious ritual, but I think you're right, because then you were either baptized or not. Are you baptized or are you not? And if you refuse to take the Holy Communion, if you refuse to get baptized, in certain countries, in certain places, they were saying there need to be dire consequences to the people who've refused
It's
the
like
consecration, who've refused the baptism.
the recusants in the 16th and 17th century. So you had these people that were Catholics that refused to go to Church of England mass and take communion because they thought it was blasphemous or whatever. The recusants, and so they weren't like executed or whatever, but they were fined heavily. The reason why my own family, the Duttons of Dutton, went down in the world financially for a period was because they were recusants and they paid the fines because they were not prepared to go to Church of England mass. And it was like that. But you weren't fined, but you were a second-class citizen. So in Oulu, for example, you weren't allowed. You had to leave any pub or cafe or restaurant by 7 o'clock, unless you had a certificate stating that you had had the jab.
Which is a public shaming ritual. That means at 6:55, if you left, you may as well have worn like the white shirt and shaved head that they would give you before they put you the witch trial. I mean, it's there was a lot of humiliation rituals and shaming rituals that went on, and a lot of it. I'm not the first person to say this by far, but it was, will you obey or not? If you are a defier of the high church, you are putting us all at risk. You're going to cause my children, my grandmother to die. You
going to make
are
God
bringing
angry.
us to
You're
hell.
going to make God angry, and you still.
Yes.
And I mean, as I said, there's a woman I interviewed called Lionel Shriver. The interview will come out at some point. The great thing about masks was that you could just look around the supermarket and go, "Who's an evil bastard?" and he's wearing. Who's a nasty, conformist, self-righteous, mentally ill person? Who's wearing the mask, and who's not? And you could just look and you could just know, right? Twat, 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 good guy. And it was that was the brilliance of it. It was in the same way that in Islamic countries, if they wear the hijab or they don't, it's fundamentalist Muslim or just normal Muslim in Turkey or somewhere like that. And it was exactly the same. You could just know who's ghastly by whether they were voluntary. And you still get people.
I did wear the mask where I was told to, because I was traveling and they would say put your mask on and I go.
If they made me do it, well, I kicked up a bit of a stink. It's the Spanish. The Spanish are unbelievable about it.
Oh, they tried to kick me out of my apartment block. I don't know if I bored you with this story of they got a group of people together in the apartment I was renting in 2021, and they tried to kick me out. They tried to kick me out of my contract because. Stop me if I told you this. I would walk from the car. It was an underground car park in the middle of summer, so it would be 30, 40 degrees heat. And I would walk from my car to the private entrance. It was a nice place. I had an entrance to my apartment. It was a 15-meter walk in 30 to 40 degree heat, covered in sweat. And they saw me do that, the people in the apartments, without a mask on. And I just said, I'm not I'll put the mask on to go to the supermarket, but in a car park with no people in 40-degree heat on a 15-minute, I'm not putting the mask
No,
on
but that
to
shows
get
you
out my car and walk to the
it's a
door.
neurotic religious ritual, and you are
Yeah.
showing in a context of heightened instinct and heightened anxiety that you are a non-conformer, and therefore in other dangerous situations you might be a non-conformer, and therefore you are dangerous. You're like a non-conformer in the army, and that's their reaction. Let's not forget, this is the country that installed Franco and various other dictators.
That occurred to me. I was like, and some of they were older people who would have lived under Franco, and I was like, are they in an emotional flashback back to, full-blown fascist times, where they're worried that if there was one dissident in the apartment block, maybe they'd all get yoinked out and interrogated. They were really upset with me, and I was saying to them, my Spanish is good, but it's not that good. I was trying to explain in Spanish. There is no danger to you in me doing this. If I spit on the floor and you run over and lick up the spit immediately, you still won't catch it. The virus is too fragile. It's too hot in here. And they're like, that's not the point. So I said, well, what's the point then? If you're not worried about me infecting anybody, what is the point?
You're not obeying the rules, and you're not obeying the rules in a circumstance of people being highly on edge. That's the point. You get that in Germany. I remember I told this anecdote before, that they were just standing there gormlessly, these people that don't speak English, saying, they're just standing there in front of the train, and everyone was standing there waiting to get on the train. And I was like, "Fuck this!" So I just pushed past them to get onto the train. And then this course, this whole ruckus. I've told you this story before, haven't I?
No, you haven't, but I can imagine you doing.
And then this fat hippie with curly brown hair that's a bit older than me. There's one of the Germans on the platform said to me, "You have to wait for them to get off, you idiot." And I went, "Idiot?" He goes, "Yeah, you idiot." And I said, "God, you're very aggressive. No wonder your grandparents voted for Hitler." And that.
Did he like that?
And he didn't like that. He didn't.
No,
he didn't like. If
no,
you want to trickle a German, if you a left-wing German, obviously, if you want to get under the skin, the skin that's not been made into a lampshade.
Just remind them that the National Workers' Party was left-wing. They were socialists.
And it was very left-wing. So, what did you say? What did you actually say to these Spanish people? Did you just say, what is it? Vete la merda.
There's different things that one could say, that one should, especially when you're addressing like older people. And looking back, I don't know whether I did the right thing or not, because they really did hold like a group meeting. There was a Romanian concierge, a guy called Miguel, who's a good friend of mine who worked there, and he was saying to me, he was like, "Listen, brother, just put mask on face, go from car with mask." And I was like, I don't want to. It's absurd. You can't catch a virus like this. So,
no me gusta.
No me gusta, no me encanta, yo no quiero.
Yeah. Viejo estúpido.
Viejo estúpido.
Viejo, stupid old woman, isn't it? Vieja.
Oh, vieja. You could, vieja estúpida. Vieja estúpida. Maybe.
Yeah, you can say that.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's what you should have said. Vieja estúpida. Franco es muerte.
Spanish with Professor Ed Dasson.
GCSE grade B. Don't knock it. That didn't come up in the exam. No, that's nothing to do with Franco.
Oh.
It wasn't in the exam. Hablo poco de español. ¿Hablas inglés? Hablo menos de español. Anyway, moving on from that. Oh, we're about halfway through. So to those of you that are new, hello. Welcome to the Jolly Heretic. We are an online public house. We meet on Mondays at 7 p.m. UK time, in which we discuss based science and based stuff and anything that generally comes into our minds. And if you are new to the channel, please subscribe. Subscribe here and subscribe. I'm almost on the magic number, so it really helps me. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe, for God's sake. Also subscribe to my Substack, where if you like what I do, you can support me. That's thejollyheretic.com. Where if you like, link in description. Where if you like what I do, you can support me for as little as the cost of a pint of beer a month. You can also, in link in description, you can buy Jolly Heretic merchandise. You can sign up for my course at Gegen Uni. You can send in super chats on Entropy. You can send in Bitcoin. You can send in things on Odyssey, and you can, of course, buy my books, all of which are available on Amazon. And the most recent of which is this one, which I think is a good introduction to my thinking, The Naked Classroom, The Evolution Psychology of Your Time at School, which answers basically every key question in evolutionary psychology that you might have come up with at school. So do go. And does Dutton prefer communists over Franco? No. Absolutely not. No, communists are ugly, disgusting people that are jealous and want to make the whole world disgusting to deal with their own mental problems, and I hate them, all of them. And also subscribe if you're on my channel and use Richard to Richard's channel. That is Richard Grannon. Put it into YouTube. His various channels, and he of course has a book which is available on Amazon as well, which is called A Cult of One. So go and have a look at that. That's jolly interesting. I was chased by non-mask wearing people trying to spit at me. It went both ways. Really?
Yeah, that's a really good way of preventing viral transactions.
Wonderful.
You're going to get us infected.
It didn't go both ways. They weren't mask wearing people trying to spit at you.
I believe that. It depends on what country she's in. If she's in America, when I flew to America during the lockdowns, I saw some scenes there. People were getting hysterical over the mask, and it was usually Karens who were getting upset.
Yeah, well, then there's people not wearing it. You mean?
Yeah.
Oh, then those people should be taken away and flogged.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I think that's the way. Like that's the things like borderline personality disorder. The reason why it's only becoming described more recently is because in past times they were accused of witchcraft and dealt with, or they were something like that. So that's what they were just dealt with quickly. And they realized if they didn't control their emotions, if they allowed themselves to act up and play out, then they'd be severely punished. So they didn't.
So there is dialectical behavioral therapy by Marsha Linehan to deal with borderline personality disorder, and then there are the Salem witch trials, which is Professor Ed Dotton's alternative solution. We're working with solutions compassionately, trying to find our way here. It makes a lot of sense.
There's two kinds of solution to borderline personality disorder. I won't go and I've described it before. Look it up. As you say, there is getting them to talk through what Daddy did to them or whatever. And then he was very physical with them. And then.
Oh. Goodbye, YouTube. Goodbye, channel. Goodbye, everyone.
There's that wave, and he shouts and knock about and stuff. And then there's, as I say, there's the Salem witch trial solution, which I think both have their merits.
You've got to weigh it. You've got to be reasonable. Weigh pros and cons.
Okay, fuel. Scandinavian Sunset is saying. I don't know what that means. But I don't know what relevance that is to anything. When I was in Bulgaria, there was a petrol station that was run by two elderly lesbians.
Lovely.
It was nice? Weird. It was, well, I got out and I tried to we had a diesel rented car, and the thing, whatever you call it, that you put where the petrol comes out of.
Hose.
Hose wouldn't fit into my car, and I didn't know what to do. It was weird, and she was coming out and saying stuff to me in Bulgarian, but of course I couldn't understand it. And so eventually we worked out that she wanted us to move the car, and that the hose was for, I don't know, cars that have very small nozzles, or I don't know what the point of it was. Soviet era cars with tiny little nozzles, I don't know. And so then we moved it to a different diesel pump, and then it worked. Put the diesel in the car. I tell you, this diesel, you can drive a very long way on diesel compared to petrol.
Oh yes, I've always gone with diesel cars. I'm a big fan.
You use basically, we drove all the way from where we were staying to this place, whatever it was called, this chocolate box Eastern European medieval type town, full of Nazi memorabilia. There's lots of that. If you go to an antique shop in Bulgaria, there's loads of Nazi memorabilia. And then we got back and we realized, and he said, "Oh, you've got to return it on a full tank." So we went to after doing this long sort of 3-hour round trip. We then go back to the car place, and she puts the petrol pump in and she fills the petrol. She presses the button for about 3 seconds. We say, "Yeah, okay, full."
It's amazing.
So it's great.
Did you enjoy Bulgaria?
It's quite a boring place. It's not much. There's not much to do. I no, there wasn't. It wasn't like Albania. Albania, there was lots of Greek ruins and interesting stuff. But with Bulgaria, not so much. And they had this same problem that they had in Albania, which is that they're incapable of bringing a family their food at the same time.
Service is something else in Albania. Service is a different thing. I love Albania. I love Albanians, but service is like, wow.
They just bring it whenever they feel
when it's ready, and stop complaining.
And that's the same in Bulgaria. It's the same in Bulgaria. They just bring it whenever they feel like it.
Yeah.
And
if you ask them, they'll be like, "What is your problem? It wasn't ready. That's why I didn't bring it. I brought it when it was ready." And
also, they bring Coca-Cola with no ice in, to the extent that I have to ask for it, and they still bring it with no ice in. That's what I have to get. And then they bring the ice, but it's in a little jug, and they are. I don't know what it is about Bulgaria and Romania and Albania that they are just incapable of what I would see as just basic service.
No, they don't like that. They don't enjoy it.
I want my stuff at the same time. In fact, oh no, hang on, that's not it. I was going to read something. I was moved to write poetry about it. I was so appalled. I wrote a little poem. It's just called Bulgaria. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
Now, finally, I'm presented with my bream. Perhaps she had to wrestle it from the brine. But our family won't be eating as a team because meals can't be brought at the same time by these surly serving girls, only as pretty and as dusky as a Croat or a Greek. But unlike in a southern Thracian city, decent English is not something they can speak. I can't think of a single one that's prominent, a great scientist who makes up for these waiters, to whom one might erect a mighty monument, well, other than their communist dictators. It was down here once that Orpheus played his lyre. Perhaps he even stayed in my hotel. And like we found the internet so dire that he decided he was better off in hell. If your passion's ancient ruins, there's Albania. No tourists, cheap, and birds Hellenic fit. Exsanguating aristocrats, Romania. But Bulgaria is really rather shit. That's why.
It's a very good poem.
Thank you.
I personally think Bulgaria is a wonderful country, but it's a good poem. I like your poem very much.
Well, I actually added then after I wrote that, and I discovered the fact that it's awash with Nazi memorabilia. There was one guy he was from Bishop Auckland, and he was so excited to get like SS stuff. So I added a postscript, which is, if you're into National Socialist antiques, lighters marked with swastikas, old rings with Hitler's face, then come for a few weeks, as the junk shops are heaving with such things.
I'm a little concerned that you hated Bulgaria, and its one redeeming feature
it was interesting at least to look at.
This is how you get yourself in trouble.
You don't see things like that very often, you know.
No, so, I agree with you. I would be fascinated as well. I probably would tell no one. And I certainly wouldn't announce it on the internet.
Oh, I see. Oh well, yeah. That's the thing. I'm told I have no filter. So I just but it was interesting. I was like, where have you got all these things from? My God, I mean, this is insane.
I have such a huge collection at home that these can join.
It was like that Father Ted episode. You know that Father Ted episode where there's the guy that has all the Nazi memorabilia. It was like that. I was like, well, what the hell is happening here? Why have you got all this stuff? It's like, in the war of Bulgaria, Boris III, he was our king. He was on the side of the Nazis, and many Nazis came here. And there was like 3 different shops in this one place, the name of which escapes me, that were dedicated to just that. That was you could imagine going to the bank asking for a loan, and they say, "Oh, can I have my loan? What's your business? I'm going to sell Nazi memorabilia to tourists from like Czechoslovakia, and because that's mainly who the tourists are."
They just said, "Yeah, that's fine. You can totally do that."
That sounds great. And then someone else goes for a loan. They say, "I'm going to open a restaurant, and I'm going to serve the different meals of the family of 4 over a period of 40 minutes." Yes,
they would have just said, "That's normal. Why are you telling us?
Why are you telling me that? That's how it works.
No need to announce that. That's what we do."
That's how it happens in Bulgaria. Nobody wants to socially eat their food with their family. They want to gobble their food as good as you can. They want food ready to eat now. That's what they want to do. Nobody
And
wants
then,
to.
and then when everyone else is eating, just stare at them with empty, sort of communist abused post-traumatic
The
eyes.
English was so bad that I had to use Google Translate on my. It's with young people, with young waitresses. I had to use. This didn't happen in Albania. I think the English of the Bulgarians is worse. I had to put it into the Google Translate and things like that so they could understand.
So that's appalling that they didn't speak the Queen's English
I
in
don't
another
expect
country.
them to speak the Queen's English, but I expect them to understand. Like English is the new Latin. And in the same way that if this was the 17th century, I'd be quite appalled if I couldn't move around Europe speaking in Latin.
You should have gone into your phone and tried a little Bulgarian. It's not that hard to speak.
Well, that's what I did, didn't I? I had Google Translate. So
you spoke. Oh, you did.
That's
you
exactly
were speaking,
what I did because
you
they're
were speaking
English
Bulgarian to them.
Yeah, so I would put the word in English, like I don't know, like trout or something, and then it would say in Bulgaria what it was. And they go, "All right, yeah, you want that? Okay."
But you weren't in Sofia. You weren't in the city. You'd driven out into the countryside.
Oh no, I wasn't in Sofia where no tourists go. No, I was in a purely touristy town where the whole industry is based around tourists from all over Eastern Europe, where the lingua franca is English, but where these people didn't speak it.
Yes.
Even in Albania, and that's saying something, people spoke better English.
Yeah, the level of English in Albania. I've only been to Tirana and Shkodra, but yeah, it's pretty good. Like most people will speak.
It's not. No, it's not good. But it's well
better than my Albanian, that's for sure.
Well, no, I'm not. No, but Albanian is not the new Latin. You really look. If you're watching this and you're from anywhere, you really should. I'm not just saying this because I am English, because it's not as if it's English that I speak abroad. It's Globish. It's this language. It's this version, this dialect of English I've learned, where there's one word for everything. I don't speak in Albania in the same English I speak to Richard. I speak in specific.
Your idea of broken Albanian English.
I think what words will they know? Will they know the word dog? Yes. Will they know?
Because I don't want dog. I want glass of Coke.
I want cat. I want a glass of Coke with ice.
But no dog. Dog, no.
Not eyes.
Not
ice.
Ice. I could just picture you with a passport in one hand and a walking cane in the other, going, "Damn you, speak English! God damn you!"
You shouldn't advertise that they can deal with things in English if they can't. That's
yes. They do advertise that.
If they're young, there really is no excuse for it.
No.
It's not patronising, Adrian R. It is the new Latin. And that's the way it is. Even in this country, even in Finland, people judge each other by how good their English is.
Quite right.
It's like a side of education in this country. How good is your English? Like when I was in Latvia working there, I was doing this teaching in English, and they were concerned about speaking in English, not because they're speaking to a native speaker. I reassured them, look, you understand that I live in Finland, speak Finnish, know what you're going through, so don't worry about this mistake. So I gave some examples of mistakes I've made in Finnish, and then they were prepared to speak in English. But it was that they're speaking English in front of each other.
Yeah.
And so this is a sort of a social insight into each other.
Swedes do that. It's like a sort of a hierarchy of snobbery based on, and they're very good. Like their English is probably better than mine. Swedes will sort of speak English to each other to be a bit, I don't know, a bit yuppie-ish or a bit trendy or whatever.
I know that I was in Delhi and there were these two chaps having a little, and they were talking in Hindi, and then they decided they were going to talk business. So then they said, okay, we're going to talk business. Let's go into English. And that's what they did. And they spoke business. Yeah. And then they dealt with the business. Yeah. And then they went back into Hindi.
Yes, it's a mercantile language for filthy capitalists.
Yeah. Someone said in the chat, didn't I used to live in Aberdeen? They barely speak English there. That is true. A woman once came up to me in a chat that were having a beer, and she spoke to us in Doric, which is the Scots of the area. And of course, I didn't understand what she was saying. And she went, and then just said it again in English, and it was completely different. So it's not like a person that speaks in a strong Yorkshire dialect or something. It really is a different language. I was once in Dublin, and there was this guy that drove the bus from the airport to the centre of Dublin, and he said every time anyone got on, they were all foreign. Of course, he goes, "Where are you heading?" And I thought to myself immediately, I understand that a foreigner will not know that phrase.
There's just no way.
But
If you're French, you're not going to know.
Every day get the response that he got from this Russian, whatever she was, which was like, "What do you mean? Where are you going?" O'Connell Street. He must get that every day, but he wants to spread the phrase. Where are you heading? And so it's evangelical, and so he insists, "Where are you heading?" And everybody except me did not understand that phrase. Where are you heading? And so, but he just.
I admire the stoicism and the self-discipline to just keep ploughing ahead with "Where are you heading? Where are you heading? Where are you headed?"
But no, he could just say, "Where are you going?" But no, he didn't. He
in special foreign or broken English,
where are
you going?
Where you go?
Milking cows.
O'Connell Street. You go there. €5. Anyway, we have a question. And this is from Goth Bureaucrat, and he says, "Ed, get Angela Rayner onto the stream." I would get Angela Rayner onto the stream, but then I'd have to write her an email, and I don't think she can read. So that would be the idea. I guess I could get her parliamentary telephone number and ring her and leave a message.
Just send her an email in text speak. Would you like to come on my stream?
On the stream. Yeah, we should emphasize on the stream, because let's not forget she had a baby at 16, and she's quite into that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think I think she would probably be the second stupidest person I'd had on the stream if I had her on the stream. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it would work. I think she'd get upset. You'd get frustrated. We'd get frustrated. She'd feel she wasn't understood, and she'd, "Oh no, you're being racist. Oh, you can't be racist in up our way in Cheshire, which is 98% white."
Is she from Cheshire?
She's from Stockport. And she's from
because you were sort of doing a Jamaican Geordie there.
It wasn't Jamaican would be like this, man. No, it's not Jamaican. Geordie be like, it's a bit like, no. I was doing west of England, northwest, like that. That's how they talk. They talk like that.
So there's one show that should be Spanish with Professor Ed Dutton, and then impressions.
From Yorkshire, up the other side of the country, they talk like that. So it's completely different. Birmingham is like that. And so you know I'm right that these are reasonable accents. I do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you do know you're right.
This is very specific. It's like Richard Grannon, the way he talks, sound, and then other ones. I'll as best as I can try and do.
It's not bad. I mean, that's your blood. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. The Scouse accent must be there.
Hereditary Birkenheadium, or
yes.
Sorry, what's the place called? Tranmerium.
Tranmerian, yes.
And what was the other place? Wallaceum. Newferian and Ferry Parkium. So all that stuff, it's all there bubbly. Weirdly, I had a dream last night where I met my grandfather, who died in 1979, who I never met. Yeah. And I explained to him that I'd been to all his old haunts, including where he used to live.
Interesting.
And on camera, and I showed it to him on the GoPro, and he
That's really cool.
He used to
Go on.
No, he was very into filming. All these city films when he died. He's loads and loads of city films. He's really into photography and stuff. So he was quite interested in the GoPro in the dream.
Well, just yesterday, I was talking to my friend Danny about you, because he's got family that live in New Ferry, and I was just staying in New Ferry in an Airbnb there. And I said that you'd been to Wallasey, and we'd taken these different places. And New Ferry was one of the houses that you visited, because New Ferry is often thought of as being a not very nice place. And he was saying, "Oh, but there's mansions down there, down by the river." And I said, "Yeah, no, I saw them for the first time when I took Ed Dutton down there. Some really, like your grandfather's, I think it was, your grandfather's house. Lovely house."
Yeah, by the river. Yeah, it was nice. It was. I don't know why he needed that house. It was huge. I mean, I suppose he had to have servants to do his cooking for him and stuff like that. Which was,
indeed. Where would the help stay if it were not a large house?
Help would stay. I'm just going to see if we have any other questions. Low Mercury Tuner says, "Queen's English, Richard. Surely it's the King's English now."
It will be the Queen's forever for me. No, it's the
Yeah,
King's. It is the
we
King's.
just always say the Queen's English, don't we? I mean, I don't. I suppose it is the King's English.
Long
But if
did she reign, though?
who the Queen?
She did a long one. She had a
She
long
did.
session with us.
It was a long. It was a long, long reign. It was
She did good.
specifically. It was specifically 70 years long.
Wow.
So she reigned. She reigned ages. She was the longest reigned monarch in.
She took that line, "long to reign over us," very literally.
And also, though, she did speak properly. Though she'd say things like, "And now my husband and I are very pleased to be here," and she spoke in this clipped kind of way, where it is very, very clear. Whereas Charles, he's not clear. His English isn't clear. Oh, my it's like Boris Johnson. So I sort of I think we should probably call it the Queen's English. Okay, chaps, I'm going to wrap up now. So I will see you all. Remember to subscribe. Remember, it's very important. If you're watching this, you're not subscribing, you're basically stealing TV or internet TV.
Quite right. It's true. You're stealing our intellectual property.
Stealing our intellectual. We're saying to you, you're not paying for anything. So we're saying to you, if you want to watch this, then and you've enjoyed yourself over the last hour and a half, then you should subscribe. Morally, you must. Otherwise, you are stealing. So obviously do that. And because I want to get to 100,000, and I'm looking about 1,000 and a bit short. Golf because Ed Get Richard Tyson. Well, considering the things I've just said about him, I'm not 100% sure that would be the most amazing idea. I think there have been. I mean, I had Neil Hamilton on, who was the leader of the UK Independence Party, and I had Godfrey Bloom on, who was a UK Independence Party MEP. So I could possibly give it a try. Actually, I could give it a go. I'll try and get someone from Reform on anyway. That's a good idea. I'll try and get.
I'm sure you can get somebody from Reform on, no doubt.
I think I could. I think I could give it a go. Of course. All right, chaps. Oh, another question. Chad says, have you seen the Saylor article on IQ and liberalism? Do genes responsible for IQ cause liberalism, or is it just correlated? Well, the fact that something is correlated does not mean it's causative. But if the genes for IQ are associated, he's saying that the people that have genes for IQ are more likely to be liberal. So I suspect that is causative. It just means that people that are intelligent are more likely to be liberal at the moment, and that is for genetic reasons, rather than just because of environmental factors. But that doesn't. Yeah. I don't see what that's telling you. All that's telling intelligence is highly genetic. People that are intelligent are more likely to be liberal. I bet if you ran that experiment, if we had the data, if we were able to do so 100 years ago, you'd find the opposite.
Yeah, it's very context specific in terms of history, isn't it?
It's very context specific. So what would be more interesting is if there were specific genes that made you liberal, and I suspect that intelligent people are liberal for environmental reasons. Whereas I suspect that then you get some people that are just liberal for genetic reasons. If there was a correlation between the genes for liberalism and the genes for conservatism, that would be very interesting. I suspect there is a negative correlation at the genetic level. But this is overwhelmed by environmental considerations because we were selecting for conservatism under evolutionary conditions and we were selecting for intelligence under evolutionary conditions. So you'd suspect them to be typically related, but there are things that could overwhelm it, such as the association of intelligence with social conformity in a highly liberal ecology. Yeah. So I think that would be Indigo Daffodil is saying yawn, Richard. Oh, I don't know if he wants to yawn. Indigo Daffodil is a very nice name. If I had my time over again and I had a daughter,
you would call yourself Indigo Daffodil.
Indigo Daffodil Dutton.
Beautiful.
Indigo Daffodil Dutton.
Lovely.
That sounds nice. But I don't. My daughter's just not called that. So, all right, chaps. I will see you all on Monday, and goodbye.